You won't believe what has happened recently on the world stage. It's a situation that completely changed the balance of power among the great nations. But before we begin, don't forget to give this video a like if you enjoy the content, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any updates on global geopolitics. What I'm going to share with you today sounds like something out of a movie, but it's pure reality. The United States, that superpower that has long set the rules across the globe, just went through a very embarrassing moment. And the most impressive part is that the group behind this turnaround is one many people still underestimate: the BRICS. Let's start at the beginning. A few days ago, the Americans organized a military operation that was supposed to be simple and quick. They sent a giant warship, the USS Bataan, along with other support vessels toward the Caribbean. The official mission was to combat drug trafficking, but everyone knows that excuse has been used thousands of times to justify military interventions in Latin America. The plan was to land elite US Marine troops in the region. It looked like one more of those operations the United States carries out when it wants to show strength and intimidate neighboring countries. Only this time, things didn't go as expected. Suddenly, out of nowhere, the entire operation was cancelled. The ships that had been sailing for days simply turned around and went home. The official explanation: they said it was because of a hurricane forming in the region. But anyone who knows a little about military ships understands that this doesn't make much sense. Friends, let me explain something. These American warships are built to withstand any storm. They have sailed in much worse conditions and have never had to cancel missions because of the weather. So why would this time be different? The answer is a word that is changing the world: BRICS. For those who don't know it well yet, BRICS is a group formed by Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. These countries joined forces to create an alternative to American and European dominance in the global economy and politics. And look at this interesting timing. Exactly when the Americans were preparing that military operation, the BRICS countries began making very strategic moves in the region. Russia increased its military presence in Venezuela. China ramped up its infrastructure investments across Latin America. Brazil and India tightened commercial ties with several countries in the area. Don't forget to comment below what you think about this whole situation. I always read every comment, and I love hearing your opinions on these topics. Venezuela became the center of this entire dispute, and it's no wonder. This country has the largest oil reserves in the entire world. Whoever controls Venezuelan oil holds a huge advantage in the global energy market. That's why the Americans have always wanted influence there. But now, the situation has completely changed. Venezuela is no longer alone. It has full support from the BRICS countries. Russia has installed state-of-the-art air defense systems on Venezuelan territory. China is investing billions in energy and technology projects. Brazil is facilitating regional trade. India is buying Venezuelan oil, even with all the American sanctions. That created a completely new scenario. If the United States tried to invade or attack Venezuela, it wouldn't be dealing with a small South American country anymore. It would be facing pushback from the entire BRICS bloc, which represents almost half of the world's population and a giant share of the global economy. And here's the most interesting part of the whole story. The Americans realized they no longer had the strength they once did. They couldn't just show up in a region and do whatever they wanted without facing serious consequences. Mexico also entered this story in a very important way. The new Mexican president, Claudia Sheinbaum, made it very clear that her country will no longer accept American military interventions in the region. This is a huge shift because Mexico has long been considered the United States' backyard. But now even Mexico is getting closer to the BRICS countries. It's doing business with China, cooperating with Brazil, and buying energy from Russia. This shows how rapidly the world is changing. If you're enjoying this content, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. I always bring analyses on these topics that everyone should know about. The truth is that the United States is going through a military crisis that few speak about openly. More than 40% of the American naval fleet is facing maintenance problems. The ships are old, have constant technical failures, and repairs are delayed. That means that in practice, the US doesn't have the military capability it pretends to have. Meanwhile, the BRICS countries are investing heavily in modern military technology. Russia has developed hypersonic missiles that the Americans cannot intercept. China is building a navy that, in a few years, will be larger than America's. India is becoming a respected nuclear power. Brazil is modernizing its armed forces with Russian and Chinese equipment. This shift didn't happen overnight. It has been built over years, while the Americans were busy with wars in the Middle East and conflicts that led nowhere. In the meantime, the BRICS countries were quietly planning a new world order. What happened with those American ships in the Caribbean is only the beginning. It's a sign that times have changed. The United States can no longer impose its will on the rest of the world without facing organized and effective resistance. And the most striking thing is that the BRICS countries achieved this without firing a single shot. They used diplomacy, economics, and international cooperation to create a situation in which the Americans simply had no way to move forward without taking enormous risks. Comment below if you think this is truly a definitive change in the global landscape or just an isolated episode. Latin America has long been considered the United States' backyard. Since the Monroe Doctrine in the 19th century, Americans have believed they had the right to intervene in any country in the region whenever they wanted. They did it in Chile, in Guatemala, in Panama, in Grenada, and in so many other places. But now that era seems to be coming to an end. Latin American countries are finding alternatives to American dominance. They're joining the BRICS, doing business with China, buying technology from Russia, and cooperating with India. That has created a completely new situation. The Americans can no longer intimidate countries in the region as they did before. If they try to use force, they will face not only the country they're attacking, but an entire network of international support that includes some of the largest economies and militaries in the world. The episode of the American ships returning home shows that Washington has finally understood this new reality. They realized that a military intervention in Venezuela could trigger an international crisis far bigger than they were prepared to handle. And this isn't just a victory for Venezuela or for the BRICS. It's a victory for all the small and medium-sized countries that have always suffered under the imperialism of great powers. Now they know there are alternatives, that they can seek support elsewhere, that they no longer have to submit to American pressure. Please like this video if it helped you better understand this complex situation. The future will be very interesting to watch. The BRICS is growing rapidly. Other countries are asking to join the group. Saudi Arabia, Iran, Argentina, and several other African countries all want to be part of this new alliance that is changing the balance of global power. The United States will have to adapt to this new reality. It will no longer be able to dominate the world alone as it did before. It will have to learn to negotiate, to cooperate, and to respect the sovereignty of other nations. This change is good for everyone. A multipolar world where several powers share influence is much more balanced and fair than a world dominated by just one superpower. What happened in the Caribbean is just a small example of the great transformation taking place around the globe. And you who follow this channel are seeing it all firsthand. Don't forget to subscribe, turn on the notification bell, and share this video with your friends. The more people know about this information, the better we can all understand the world we live in. This is a historic period we're living through. A few years from now, we'll look back and see that 2025 was the year when everything changed. The year when American dominance began to be seriously challenged by a real and viable alternative. And you're here, following it all with me. Thanks for watching until the end, and I'll see you in the next video.